Welcome to the Sport and Society Squad Pod, aka the SAS. Each week, we bring you 3 sport or society stories to break down and give you our sassiest takes. With those sassy takes, we do want to give you a content warning that some of the language used on the pod may be explicit. Especially this week because we're all in costumes and we're feeling extra sassy. We ask that you please just be mindful of where you are listening and who you're listening with. With that, let's get into it. I'm here with my co-hosts, Chelsea and Ersan. What's up, friends?
Hello, hello. Happy Halloween to you and to our listeners. For those that cannot see us or listening via Spotify or Apple, we are all in costumes today. I'm in my little giraffe ears. Chelsea has a little minion costume on, and Wahida is gone fishing. Before we get into the playbook today, I want to do a quick huddle and cover a few sport and society highlights from this past week, so you all feel like you're in the know about what's going on in that pop culture and sports world. To kick us off in the sports news, if you don't know, now you will. Uncrustables are the favorite snack at halftime for more NFL teams. Apparently, the Denver Broncos are leading the pack with the most amount of weekly consumed Uncrustables at over 700. And the Seattle Seahawks in second with consuming almost half the amount of the Broncos at 320. And in third, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars consuming 315. It was like millions or something that the NFL does for Crustables. Who knew?
Is this only at halftime? Because that's a lot to consume at halftime.
Okay.
Or is it throughout the week?
No, I think it's just in general how much they order for the team each week. Okay. But apparently that's like the most favorite, also halftime snack for NFL players. And that is hilarious to me.
Can I tell you, this is how I found out that whatever the fuck Jackson Jaguars, I didn't even know we had them.
Jacksonville.
I was like, okay, they're new on the scene for me and my community, and apparently they're killing it with the Uncrustables. Uncrustables? Yeah.
Uncrustables.
With the Incredibles. I'm shook.
Yeah. In local news, the Seattle Sounders, our local MLS team, is headed to the playoffs, which is super exciting. So go Sounders.
And that's Major League Soccer, for those of you who don't know.
MLS, Major League Soccer. Thank you, Chelsea. Also in sports news, the season marks the end of an era for TNT because it wraps up its iconic NBA broadcasts after decades of shaping basketball commentary and culture with unforgettable personalities like Shaq, Charles Barkley, and that's what Wahid is dressed up as, going fishing.
Kenny the Jet Smith.
It'll be interesting to see if those folks will be retiring or where they're going to be going after, but it is truly an end of an era. In WNBA news, the Indiana Fever have parted ways with their head coach, Christy Sides, sparking speculations as fans hope the move leads to a brighter future with Caitlin Clark as their rising star. And this marks half of the WNBA coaches this season being fired.
Holy shit.
So
I didn't know the number was at half. Wow. They're shaking shit up.
In more exciting sports news, Olympic gold medal track star Allison Felix has launched a management firm dedicated to empowering women athletes. The firm is called Always Alpha, which I love for her. If you don't know Allison Felix, she was let go of Nike because she got pregnant and she was like, F you. And then she started her own shoe line. And so this is just another step in the direction of empowering women and being like, fine, I will find somewhere else to go that appreciates me, even if I have to make it myself.
I love it so much. And wasn't Allison Felix the main athlete to set up like childcare at the Olympics? She set up childcare spaces at the Olympics too. So really cool.
Yes. In culture news, the U.S. election is almost here, so we encourage all of our listeners to read up, get informed on their local ballot initiatives, and get out there and vote early. Here in Washington State, it's mail-in. You have time to still drop your ballots until Election Day at 8 p.m. in ballot boxes, but this election is really, really important. So not just the national election, but your local elections. Vote, vote, vote. In culture news, also, rapper Lil Durk was arrested in Florida on a murder for hire charge, which is wild, and even more wild, but not surprising. I don't even know who rapper Lil Durk is. In more culture news, Rapper
That's
Cardi
terrible.
B, I know who Cardi B is, shares that she was hospitalized and had to miss her performance at Atlanta's One Music Fest. And so we're just sending good vibes and speedy recovery her way. Actress Olivia Munn showed mastectomy scars in a new Skims campaign. So we're really loving this representation in media. And Jenna Fisher from The Office and the Office Ladies podcast shared that she was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2023 and is now cancer-free. Thank you, Jenna, for sharing your story and giving hope to others going through this tough diagnosis. And finally, Celine Dion was spotted supporting Adele at her Las Vegas residency show.
I love it. There were some
It
tears
was
it
so
looked like
sweet.
as well. It was just cute. Love to see ladies supporting ladies, you know? USAS approved. Anyways, what a huddle, Arisan. But now let's get into the playbook for today. So for today, we're going to start with an update on the Women's National Soccer League, discuss the WNBA opting out of their collective bargaining agreement, and then conclude with a discussion on musicians making money. Okay, love it. But I'm going to kick us off. And if you can even believe it, I'm going back-to-back weeks, talking about sports content. I'm not sure if this is like what the listeners are asking for, but I don't care. I'm going to deliver and I'm going to do it well, hopefully. So with that,
I
one
believe in
thing
you.
that we haven't really talked about on the pod is the sport soccer. And as a formal, thank you. And as a former like high school soccer girly pop, I'm excited
Star.
to like give us a little, well, that's debatable. I was there.
Just take it. Chelsea, take
Sometimes,
it.
you know, they talk about there's like a personality hire. I feel like that could have also been applied for me at the time. I just, you know, love jokes, love to be sassy, whatever. But anyways, enough about my career in the soccer world. Let's give a little update on the National Women's Soccer League. I mean, I'm happy to do it. So if you don't know, now you will know. This year, the quarterfinals for the Women's Soccer League were expanded to include 8 teams, so it's different from last year. And the teams that we know will be going into the quarterfinals so far, or at least at the time of this recording, are the Orlando Pride, Kansas City Current, the Washington Spirit, and that's not Washington State, that's just Washington, D.C., so something completely different. And then Gotham FC, which I have to just say, what a badass name Gotham FC is. Can you even imagine saying, like, that's your place of work? Gotham FC. I do feel like it's also fitting that they are the defending champions. Just saying. I also forgot to mention that the quarterfinals dates, venues, and times have been selected, so please mark your calendar. The girlies will be matching up the weekend of November 8th to the 10th. I feel like I still have time to like move some things around to support our girlies. And then after that, the following weekend, they'll go into semifinals, and then the championship game will be on November 23rd. So that's a lot. This is just another women's sport, I'll go ahead and say, that's been capitalizing on the increased viewership and attendance of games. So it's really cool to see that they are changing the format with quarterfinals, accommodating and providing more opportunities for fans. We love to see it. I know that was pretty high level, but like, will either of you be tuning in? What's the sitch?
I for sure will be following it. I will watch it. I remember back in like 2016 which was like legendary at the time, and this was like Abby Wambach, Megan Rapinoe, Carly Lloyd, Alex Morgan of the U.S. Women's National Team. Like that was what I really followed when they sued the United States Soccer Federation for equal pay with men. And what's crazy is at the time, from that, like when they were citing 2013 to 2016, that they brought in more profits than the men's, because remember the men's team, U.S. national team sucked.
Yeah.
And the women's national team killed it. So they were bringing more profits, but they were getting paid less than half what the men's were getting paid. And get this, in 2020, federal judge dismissed the claim. And one of the things that they were saying that the men's soccer, because they were more, their biology allowed them to play better. And that was something that claimed the U.S. Soccer Federation went in. And then the judge was like, oh, yeah, this claim is not good. Like your equal pay claim is not going through. And so the women had to appeal it. And it wasn't until 2022 that they finally got awarded equal pay. And so that was a whole thing. So that's what I know about soccer, but I love that for them. So there's like a lot of pioneers in the women's equality.
Yeah, love that they're expanding the game. Admittedly, again, as a self-proclaimed non-athlete, although when I was in middle school, the boys soccer coach, he like substituted for our class one day and he had us play soccer and he was like, Miss Ma'am, maybe you should try out for soccer. So maybe in another universe, I was a pro soccer girly. I have no idea. Right now,
There's still indoor leagues that you could go demolish. I
think that window is closed in this universe, but maybe. But it's one of those things, like I admittedly am trying to learn a lot about the sport, so I will be tuned in as part of my research. I think I just love watching the game with my dad. He's a really big fan, but I still have a lot to learn. And I'm still really trying to wrap my head around the fact, like, why we call it soccer and not football. So naturally, I looked it up. I don't know if you want to know, but I'm going to share it with our listeners. Fun fact. The reason Americans say soccer while the rest of the world says football is actually based on an English export. So they call it football, we call it soccer, but we call it soccer because of them. So this is what happened, right?
Well, again, it's giving, yeah.
Back in the 1800s, the Brits had two kinds of football. They had rugby and association football. So our soccer. They used football to refer to both. So to keep things like straight, they shortened association football to ASOC or ASSOC. And with a little slang like magic, little sprinkle, little, razzle dazzle, they started calling it soccer. Yeah. It still doesn't really make that much sense because it doesn't really sound
I'm
the
making
same.
up words all the time. I respect it.
Fair.
Can you imagine one of the made up words you made went international like that?
Fair.
I can do nothing but respect.
But since rugby fell off in England, they hung on to football as the primary way to, like, the primary term. And then everyone else started having their own version of football, like us. So we stuck with soccer.
Okay.
Fun fact.
Didn't know.
I love that though. And yeah, people do get upset when you're abroad and you call it soccer. They have a lot of things to say about Americans.
But now I can say it's your fault.
Yeah.
It's their fault. Blame it on them.
I'd love to see a response. Should I ask if I go to a Chelsea game this winter?
Like, do you know why we call it soccer?
Just a little research. Watch me get dunked on.
Yeah, get
thrown in a trash can.
The response things thrown at you. Well, I love that because what it's giving to is just soccer players and women athletes in general leading the cause for equal pay. I know Alex Morgan, who started the company Together X, is that shirt where you say everyone watches women's sports. That's the same company. So she has really been a champion ever. I mean, probably especially since the U.S. women's team started the first equal pay. But I also know transitioning into kind of the WNBA, I've heard other female athletes saying the popularity of the WNBA is also helping spread to popularity of other women's sports because it's proof that when you actually invest in women's sports and show women's sports, people want to watch and show up. So the old sayings that I've heard all my freaking life, no one watches women's sports is boring, you just lose money, no one goes, is complete BS because look what happens when you invest and pay
because
attention to women's
everyone
sports.
watches women's sports. Like that shirt.
Hey, hell yeah.
Could we get a brand deal?
Yeah. I still want that iconic green and yellow storm shirt. I even messaged the Instagram social team.
What did they say?
They didn't respond to me, sadly. Maybe I need to keep harassing me.
Not yet.
Nothing.
Maybe they'll do a reprint. Hopefully
Not
do a reprint of that shirt.
So anyways, that's transitioning on to this next point, which is this WNBA CBA that a lot of folks have heard that the WNBPA, which is the Women's National Basketball Players Association, so pretty much the players union, decided to opt out of their collective bargaining agreement And this is after the WNBA just had a record-setting years. Players are asking
Record-setting year. They've just been sitting.
record-setting year. My words are hard today.
It's okay. It's Halloween.
Record-setting year. And then players are asking for higher wages, improved benefits, and a larger share of the media right deals it shares with the NBA. So the current agreement lasts through October 3rd, 2025, giving the league and the union a year to negotiate the next agreement. So this was also in 2020, they negotiated a landmark deal at the time, and it's set to expire in 2027. So it's actually very expected that they were going to opt out. So they had until November 1st, but they decided to pair it with the WNBA finals winning, which I think was very smart while everyone was still paying attention. And that just means in the contract, when you're bargaining, that you have set days saying, hey, you can opt out by this, meaning you want to renegotiate early, or do you want to keep with how things we set in 2020? And in 2020, the landmark at the time, they increased pay by 53% in 2020. But with that, knowing that the maximum pay and salary for 2024 is just over $241, almost $242,000, with the minimum salary for like rookies or 2 years of service is at $65,000 around, and then the average salary being $102,000. And I think this is a really important thing, and it feels personal to me because I remember back in high school and in 2008 looking at like, do I want to play college ball, and really looking at the WNBA and being like, why the salaries are like, I'm not going to get anywhere in women's basketball. They're not getting paid, because I even checked in 2010, the minimum salary, or I think the rookie salary, was around $30,000.
Oh my God.
And the veteran player salary was like 35, I should say. And the veterans players were 101,000 was what the highest person in the WNBA.
It's giving Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders.
Yeah.
Like same thing, just on a bigger scale.
Like, were the teams then putting up the players during the season at least? Like, how are you paying for rent in, like, say, Chicago or New York or, those bigger market cities?
So this is why a lot of women go play abroad during the off season, because they can't afford to live in the U.S. Going to play abroad means you're extending your season, but that means you have chance for injury. Like our rookie here in Seattle Storm just did, Nika, she got tore her ACL going to play abroad. And that also means too, oftentimes they have to come back late from the season because of that. So I also think it's important to note, because everyone's like comparing the WNBA and NBA, and the players aren't saying that they want to get paid the same as NBA players. They say they want their salaries to be equitable. So for an example, right now, the NBA, the players get to see it's about a 50-50 split, about 50% of the profits going to the players. Right now, it's like 9% of profits from the WNBA goes to the players. Yes. So it's only
why?
Yeah, and
like,
right
I guess
now,
they probably operate at a smaller margin, but still 9.3 is so freaking low.
Not even a fourth, and you're doing all the work
Yes, and they don't get direct sales from their jerseys like NBA players do. So people like Asia Wilson and Kelsey Plum and Caitlin Clark and all these people, they're not seeing a percentage of their jersey sales. So they're making all this, making all this money for the league, and they're not getting a portion of those sales. So those are all the different things that are going on. The NBA has invested in the WNBA, but they also negotiated like media deals with them. And so WNBA is starting to negotiate their own media deals, and they've been signing some pretty impressive media rights deals. Like they just did one with like Disney, Amazon Prime, and they're bringing their media deals closer to $3 billion. So the players have a lot to negotiate with. There's a lot of players that are in free agency right now. So what that means is, more than likely, players aren't going to be signing big contracts. because they'll just be signing 1-year deals because they're not going to want to sign contracts that are going to get locked
For long
into
term.
for this
Yeah.
long term. WNBA expansion's coming, so there's more teams coming. So it's about to be a
God.
free for all. The WNBA players really have a good leverage, and the president of the players union is NECA. So she's a Seattle Storm free agent right now, but she is really leading the charge there. So it's all really exciting, but I think it's really important to note,
My president.
yeah, my president, Madam President, if you will, that, women aren't asking for this crazy, like, hey, NBA players, we want to make the same as you, pay attention. It's more like,
Yeah.
hey, can we just make this equitable again? Because we're putting all of our time here. We're putting all our energy. We care about the sports. Like Angel Reese, I don't know if you saw this. She was like on a podcast or talking, and she was like, my WNBA salary barely covers like one of my bills.
Doesn't cover her rent.
Same with Caitlin Clark. So all these WNBA stars that you're seeing making a lot of money, it's through endorsement deals and other things like that, not from their actual salary. But what are your thoughts? What do you think about all this coming down?
I mean, I don't think this is a hot take by any means because I feel like most people would agree, but I am in full support. Tell me where I need to sign. I don't know what I need to do, but like, I don't know how I can, show that I'm in full support. But, more players to the players union, I feel, and I'm glad that they decided to leverage this momentum from this season as they should. And I also feel like it's a bit of a perfect storm. Like you said, there's a bunch of free agents this year, big name free agents too. And I think that's part of, their, the chips that they can use to negotiate as well. But I feel like some of the conversation was also about enhanced facilities and travel. And wasn't it just this year that some teams, like that all teams got chartered flights to and from their games? I honestly can't believe that just became a standard. Because forever, how long?
Can you break it down where my mind goes? Were they flying coach just to the game? Or what was happening?
Yeah, they were flying commercial.
It's just getting on like a regular Tuesday
Planes with
plane.
us. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's absurd.
Yeah. That
Right.
was one
Yeah,
thing
exactly.
that was negotiated in the last collective bargaining, but then
Okay.
the rollout too, you saw this year,
Took
they're
time.
like some teams were better than others weren't. And so they're finally
Yeah,
getting like
it wasn't
charter
fair.
planes.
Okay.
Yeah. And then part of that conversation too, they're also seeking improvements for practice and game facilities. And I think I read that only 3 teams have updated their facilities recently with all the bells and whistles. So like that is part of the training and the recovery, right? And I feel as though 3 teams of how many teams is not adequate. And I'm glad that that's part of what they've written into their negotiation. Because at the end of the day, it's all about training and recovery, yes, but it's also about like employee wellness, right? Giving them the tools and resources to do their jobs the best that they can. And it's like any other job. So it's about time, I feel, that these teams get their act together. I'm glad that the players are applying pressure. I feel like they're positioned really well and they have a year to negotiate, right? I feel like they're positioned really well to get what they're asking for. Because it really would be a shame for this to impact the 2026 season, especially with the momentum that we have and all the new teams that are coming in that are supposed to, kick off right around then. It would suck to kind of slow that down, but I'm glad that the conversation is happening now and they're asking for all the things that they're asking for, because that as the game grows, there's going to be more games, more travel. We're going to need them to be taken care of during all of this time.
Absolutely. And I think they have said that they don't want to, obviously, but they're prepared and will prepare if they decide to sit out the season until that agreement. Because the other thing, too, is you've got other college superstars coming through. So, yes, there's the momentum from Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese, but there's other college players that we talked about. Chuju Watkins, you got Paige Buckers coming in from UConn. You got other folks coming in. And last year, the league matched NBA in viewership. So we're also, you can't just be like, oh, we're compensating. And they surpassed the NBA's engagement as far as online and interacting. So you can no longer use the engagement that no one watches and, NBA is just bailing out WNBA. It's like, no, us women, us WNBA is surpassing the NBA in stats and things.
I also thought one thing that I read, obviously increase in pay in facilities, but one thing that was kind of brought up for the players was more support around having, like with your kids, so players with kids, which I thought is such an interesting thing to point out. I could be super ignorant in this, but I don't really feel like that's a conversation for NBA negotiations. One, feels like a whole gender thing, but in just to highlight the difference in the pay there is that, sure, they're not asking to be paid as much as the NBA, but they're not even making enough to not have that be part of the conversation. Like, you still are having to bring that into negotiations, which I think tells you everything you need to know. They don't even have enough to have some of that support. And usually, if you're making a certain amount, that's not something you have to negotiate. So I thought that was super interesting. And then still, I mean, I know I'm X amount of years into my job, but it is so bonkers to me that I could be sitting at my day job making more money than some of these women that are at the top tier of their career, the highest you can go in your career. And think about all that comes with that, the media, the interviews, the practice. Like, when I'm done with my job, I just get a log off, baby. Like, I'm done. No one's asking me for an interview on how well I did today. Like, is that interesting? Sure. But I don't want to do that. I didn't sign up for that. And to think that I'm somehow still, not that I'm not downplaying what I do is not important, but it's just interesting. So I don't know. I'm really interested to see how this goes. I fully support them asking for more. And if they have to hold out as a fan, I respect it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We understand. We're behind them for sure.
For sure.
Well, since we're talking about money and hopefully our players in the WNBA getting more money, we're going to talk about how that impacts musicians, right? I recently came across a tweet by Lily Allen, or from Lily Allen. You guys remember her?
Oh, yeah.
Where she tweeted about earning more from selling feet pictures. I don't think she was being funny about this. She's serious. No. Earning more about selling feet pictures than from her music being streamed. So, I looked up kind of what the numbers were there around how people make money. So Spotify pays around 0.3 of a cent to 0.5 cent per stream. So artists need literally millions of listens to just make a few $1,000. And that's before labels and managers take their cut, right? So that's all part of the equation as well. And statistics show that the vast majority of Spotify streams go to the top 1% of artists. So we're thinking like Taylor Swift, Beyonce, like, the big names, with the rest fighting for fractions of a penny per stream. Only 0.2% of Spotify artists make a livable income from streaming alone. So naturally, musicians have to get creative to boost their earnings. They take, to make up for some of the low streaming payouts, artists dive into fan-funded options and social media income. We see all of the ads and paid partnerships, just like we do with the athletes and stuff. Platforms like Patreon let fans chip in directly. And I know a lot of artists do lives where you can kind of send them money. And obviously YouTube and Instagram offer ad revenue as well. But those big names we talk about, Beyonce even took the title for some exclusive drops so that she can have more control over her revenue. I think Kanye West did the same thing with his revenue and his brand, because streaming just doesn't cut it for everyone. And I mean, if we think about it, they're getting a little bit more creative. And I feel like artists are now they have all these side quests that they have. Yeah. I feel like we're never going to see new music from our girl Rihanna, Miss Riri, because she is now a
no pressure though. No
legit,
pressure, girl. We're not.
Yeah, no pressure, girl. We know what you're doing. She's like a legit, makeup mogul now, right? She's competing with the best of the best up there. On one hand, I feel like services like Spotify, Apple Music, and SoundCloud give independent artists a platform. And that's really cool because there's just way more diversity of music that's out there that's accessible to us as consumers. But with that, it's also made competition so much harder because there are so many artists out there that I can listen to. Back in the pre-streaming era, I feel like we were kind of packaged up certain artists to listen to, but that meant for them that they could make more money because they were getting all of these resources kind of put, poured into them. But I don't know. That was just some of the digging that I did after I saw that headline, because that just it sounded comical at first to read it, but when you look at the numbers, it makes a lot of sense. I don't know. What do you all think about that headline? Like, how did you feel when you saw it?
Well, as a girl who discovered Lily Allen in middle school, as a fan, it makes me sad that she's not making money off of it. And I just want to plug, I know she's not making off the streams, but if you haven't heard her iconic song, Knock 'Em Out, on her debut albums, All Right Still, please go give it a listen, because for whatever reason, I think if you listen to the lyrics, you'll be confused on how 8th grade me was relating to it, but I thought it was the most iconic thing that ever was. So I just shout out to her. As a fan, I'm sad that her music isn't being able to kind of carry her through. I will also say, I can't knock her for this. I mean, who hasn't heard the murmurs and just kind of the goss about feet pics? And who hasn't at one point been so stressed out in their job where they're like, it's just my foot, like, fuck it. Like, if it's going to bring in the bills, like, let's do
100%.
it. Like, you can't tell me you haven't had that thought. So I respect her for that, and whatever you have to do to pay your bills. But once again, this is just like another person at the top of their career that is not getting paid. And it's just like, how does this happen? How can you be at the very top? People know who you are. You're performing, you're getting these gigs, and you're still not making enough to, support your lifestyle. It just kind of boggles my mind. And then last plug, because I always will find a way to bring my girl T Swifty in. But I will say, back in 2014, back from 2014 to 2017, she did remove all of her music from Spotify. And it was for this basic reason. She didn't think that there was a fair streaming system in place. And she didn't agree that the artists were getting such a small royalty. She did at one point, obviously bring it back. But the only reason she was really able to do this is because she is a star at her level and has made so much money through outside places. This isn't feasible for every artist. So that's the only reason she can do that. And I'm proud of her for taking a stand. But it just blows my mind. But here's another thing that, be the top of your career, but still can't sustain a lifestyle. Blows my mind.
Absolutely. And what's wild too is also seeing how these big like podcast hosts especially are making these like millions of dollars deals with people. So that's how people are getting paid by Spotify, but they still have this messed up streaming model. And I remember when Spotify was kind of a startup, I had a friend who like worked there, was saying, Spotify was losing money. They weren't a profitable business, right? And in my mind, and like even going back to, talking about the WNBA collective bargaining and women's soccer. So the more that people are bringing it to light, hopefully that can change, because you have these companies and all these other brands that are making millions and millions of dollars. And you've got artists that are really the quote unquote starving artists, and they don't want to be, because also what that means now is you have to do a lot more things than just do your music in order to be seen. Like I've seen artists even talk about how before record labels will even look at a song or them completing an album that has to go viral on TikTok with like 20 seconds. And like that now they're requesting
how many followers you have.
Yeah. So now
how music is being made. That's why artists are making shorter songs and shorter EPs, because then you could play it on loop and you would stream it more often when the song is short.
Geez. And I think a lot of artists are like, okay, I've got to choose between artistry and like living, or I'm going to have to do something like sell fee picks. And I will say, even though I know our podcast comes out on Spotify, I have, since I remember hearing about Spotify, I am Team Tidal, and I have that's the subscription I pay for. And I think everyone always makes fun of me for it and gets so frustrated. And I know it's also a big company, but I'm like, they at least I see on the platform doing things that are trying to amplify artists more.
Fund the arts. When we say fund the arts, we don't just mean like,
Literally.
up and coming. We mean like the artists too that we
Yeah.
consume, right? Like we are listening to their music or watching their movies, whatever it is, pay them. Pay the
Yeah,
artists, pay the athletes,
It
pay them
makes our
all.
lives vastly better. So like,
Exactly.
I feel like, well, when you're doing anything out of like necessity or scarcity or like need, that changes the art that you're creating. And
100%.
100%.
I want more artists to feel like they have the flexibility to have creative
Just
freedoms
free.
and
Mhm.
create, because that's the beautiful music that we like to consume. Because I mean, I don't know, this might be a grumpy millennial thing to say, but like the TikTok music, I like some of it, but some of the stuff that's coming out, I'm like, it all sounds the same. Like
It's true.
it feels like
Mhm.
it's clickbait. It feels like it's being designed for a TikTok dance. And I'm like, so appreciate when an artist comes out with a full album that like you can tell the time and artistry that went into it. And that's what I love to see.
Yeah, I agree. And I also feel like some of the things that do go viral are samples of older music
Yeah.
when they were putting
Yeah.
more energy and time and
Yes.
resources into the music. So like, why not go back to that if we can? But I know, again, it's kind of like it's hard because now people have more opportunity to become artists, but what's the give and take if they're not able
Yeah.
to make a living off of it?
And I will just briefly say this because it goes back to our point. We were talking about NILs and
Uh-huh.
athletes that feeling like they have to be content creators and go out on social media for actually their music to be heard or to get any recognition. And the same, it's happening in sports, it's happening in music. And there's some level of like, as an artist, I know my cousin is like a musician. I have friends that are musicians, that it's like really frustrating because social media is actually emotionally draining and like life sucking on the creative process. And there's this pressure
Yeah.
of feeling like, but how else is my music going to be out there? I got to get that viral moment. And it it's awful. So with that, I feel like I wish I ended it on a more upbeat note, but I think that's going to be a wrap for the pod today. But let us know. It's Halloween, so let us know your favorite iconic Halloween costumes that you saw this year or that maybe you've had in the past. We're going to be sharing our Halloween costumes of the past in the sports and pop culture world on our IG. So leave a comment on our YouTube, IG, or TikTok at the Sport and Society Squad.
And don't forget to hit follow and subscribe to our show on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple, all of those streaming platforms, and turn on the notifications so you can stay up to date on all of the latest sport and society news.
And I beg, please, 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 just rate the pod. But in the meantime, stay sharp, stay sassy, and we'll catch you next time.